Il verbo essere, buongiorno, buonasera, anzi, sono le 2. Il verbo essere, the verb to be in Italian. Essere o non essere, essere o non essere, è questo il dilemma. What? What did you just say? Listen, essere, which we know means to be. Essere o non essere, è questo il dilemma. To be, blam blam, to be, blam 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 blam. Guess. I'd like to buy a vowel. Good vowel would be o. Essere o non essere, è questo il dilemma. To be or not to be. That is the question? No, dilemma. Translated as dilemma because we can't translate the word question as question because the question isn't really used as question in English either. But we're not going to digress into that interesting linguistic point. Essere o non essere, the verb to be, arguably the most fundamental verb in any language because it is the most fundamental fact of existence because it denotes existence. To be, equal sign, to exist. The fundamental fact of human existence, I am. I am. Who was it that said, I think, therefore I am? But we can pare it down even further to just I am. God is the great I am, right? That's one of the names of God. Not getting religious on you. I'm just saying. The fundamental fact of existence is to be. So, this verb is an extremely important verb. We're going to conjugate it now. Io sono, or just sono, io sono. Io meaning I, tu sei, or just sei. Lui è, lei è, lui, he, lui è, or just è. Lei è, or just è. Chi è? Who is it? Chi è? Noi siamo, we, siamo. Voi siete. E voi meaning you plural. Y'all, but we're not from the South. With all due respect to people from the South, I envy you. There's a lot of wonderful things about the South, except for cockroaches, which is why I will never leave Ohio because of cockroaches and snakes. However, I'm digressing again. Voi, y'all, you plural, you both. If you're speaking to a couple, if you're speaking to a group of people, voi. Or in the south of Italy, they use that to address one person. That's the old-fashioned formal you, voi, which you still find in opera. Voi siete, and then we have loro sono, which students sometimes mispronounce as loro sonno. No, sono, one N, sono. Loro sono, they are. So that's not that hard. The verb to be is irregular, meaning it doesn't follow any rules, it just does its own thing. Which, if you think about it, is also a description of existence. All of life, all of existence is about basically doing your own thing. With no rules. My friend calls it prison rules. No rules and home for dinner. Right? So the verb to be is like that in English too. If you think about it, I am, you are, he is, we are, they are. If you think about other verbs, like walk, I walk, you walk, he walks, we walk. There's not a lot of action going on there, but the verb to be is all over the place because that's what life is like and existence is like. It's just kind of all over the place and we make up our own rules. So with all of this philosophical stuff being said, let's go back to conjugating our verb to be in Italian. Okay. So as the fundamental verb in basically every language, it should be the first verb we learn. Except for one, it's irregular, and two, we don't usually use the verb to be as a standalone verb. We don't walk around saying, I am, you are, he is, and we don't do that in Italian either. We usually follow this verb with an adjective. I am fabulous. That's an adjective, right? I am fabulous. Or we follow it with a noun. I am a woman. I am a teacher. Whatever noun we want to use, noun, person, place, or thing, or idea, whatever. An adjective is a word that describes a noun, right? So, and when we get into that stuff, that's when we get into genders. And it's funny because it's kind of like the birds and the bees talk that parents have to have with their kids, or they used to. You know, nowadays, I think it's the kids that have the talk with the parents because they're growing up so fast. But in the same way, as a language teacher, this conversation about how Italian words have gender and then their endings change and so on and so forth, it's just like one of those conversations that you kind of dread. Right? Because there are going to be the students who are ready for that and who have already sort of metabolized that. And there are going to be the students who just, kind of react like other, like kids react when they're not ready for that birds and the bees talk, right? So the point being, nouns and therefore adjectives in Italian have gender. And that is going to change their endings. So, for example, donna, la donna, that means woman. It ends in an A. That is a clue. Most of the time, a word that ends in an A is feminine. So if I say io, right? So we're back to our verb to be. Sono una donna. Sono una donna. And a lot of times you'll just hear him say sono donna. Sono donna, sono mamma, which is not true. I'm not una mamma. Sono donna, non sono mamma. What else? Sono professoressa di lingue. This is all with our verb to be. And up to here, we're good. But of course, we have to do that with everything. Then if I say tu, right? Let's say I'm talking to a guy. Tu sei uomo. You're a man. Io donna, tu uomo. Me Tarzan, you Jane, or whatever it is, the opposite. Tu sei uomo. Tu sei professore. Tu sei medico. Tu sei avvocato. Notice how most of the time, male words end in o. Most of the time, not always. And you might say, okay, I'm not traumatized yet. Okay, I'm glad. But then we get into the adjectives, right? So I might want to say, I am tall. Sono alta, because I'm female. Sono alta. Lui, he, è alto, right? Io sono, tu sei, lui è. Lui means he. Lui è alto. È alto. È alto. And you might say, okay, that's not that bad. But then we get into other adjectives that don't have A or O. They might end in an E, like giovane, giovane, young. That ends in an E, and actually that makes our life a little bit easier. Giovane. Io sono giovane. Of course, I'm young forever. Giovane. Io sono giovane. Lui è giovane. Tu sei giovane. Right? Giovane. Ends in an E, and there are other intelligente, giovane. Now they're not coming to me. Okay, but that's kind of why as language instructors and the textbook writers too, sometimes they kind of put off the birds and the bees conversation because you just want to leave the talk about gender to tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes. But tomorrow is here. Italian is a gendered language, and when we use our verb to be, then we are going to necessarily have to get into gendered language. Okay. The other awkward part about the verb to be is that things that we use the verb to be with in English, we don't use that verb with in Italian. For example, I'm hungry in English. But in Italian, we don't use our verb to be. We don't say I am hungry. We say I have hunger. And that's our verb to have, which we're going to get into next. But let's not get hyper about that right now. So one easy way to think of it, to use our verb to be without having to get into the gendered language and stuff like that, I can say sono di Chicago, which is not true. But let's just use a city that's easily recognizable. Sono di Chicago. Sono di Chicago. 3 words. Sono di Chicago. I am from Chicago. Sono di Roma. Sono di Palermo. Sono di Firenze. Sono di Bolzano. Sono di. And then I say, so I'm using my verb to be. And then I say, di dove sei tu? Di dove sei tu? Di dove sei tu? And your answer is sono di whatever city you're from. Sono di whatever city you're from, right? If you're from Columbus, Ohio, sono di Columbus, Ohio. Di dove sei? So, whenever I'm learning something, I always ask my instructor, do it the wrong way so that I know the wrong way. One of the, a couple of the mistakes I get all the time. If I say to a student, di dove sei? Di dove sei? The correct answer is sono, I am, di, from, Pittsburgh. Sono di Pittsburgh. But because I said di dove sei, my students want to say di dove sono Pittsburgh. They want to throw that dove back into the mix, which they wouldn't do in English. If I said, where are you from? You're not going to say, where are you from? Me from Pittsburgh. No, you're just going to say, I am from. You're not going to throw where back into the mix. So that's the number one mistake that students make. And the other thing, which is not the end of the world, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is if you are doing this, a lot of other people do it too. Don't worry about it, but just be aware that's what's going on. And the other thing is, they want to skip the little tiny word di. And they want to say things like, sono New York City. No, you're not New York City, my friend. Sono di New York City. Sono di. And old school Italians would say Nuova York, but that's like nobody under like 80 says Nuova York, New York, right? Sono di. So, di dove sei, sono di whatever. And same thing with he or she. Di dov'è? Di dov'è? Where is he from? Di dov'è? Which we have a contraction here. Because it's too awkward to say di dove è, we say di dov'è. We make a contraction just like we do in English when we don't walk around saying, I cannot come on Friday because I cannot. No, we say I can't. In Italian, we also have contractions. Di dov'è? Or if I'm speaking to you, because we know that lei, besides meaning she, also is you formal. I say, di dov'è lei? Di dov'è lei? And you say, what do you say? Sono di wherever you're from. So that's an easier way of learning the verb to be without having to dive into the gendered language and the which is to be and which is to have and all that other stuff, right? So let's practice that. Di dove sei? Di dove sei tu? What's your answer? Sono di wherever you're from. Va bene? Grazie.